The factory is a building or premise where people use machines and physical labor to produce goods. The Factories Act 1948 were passed by the Constituent Assembly on 28 August 1948. The Governor General of India gave his assent on September 23, 1948, and it came into force on 1st April 1949. It provides safeguards to health, safety and welfare of workers in the factories as well as protection to the exploited workers to increase their working conditions in the industries or factories. Of the Act. Factories Act is a central legislation which came into extinction in 1881. The Act was amended in the year 1891, 1911, 1922, 1934, 1948, 1976 and 1987. It was extensively amended in the year 1948. The Factories Act 1881, the first Indian Factories Act was enacted in 1881. This act mainly focused on the prohibition of employment of children under 7 years of age. This act was made applicable to the factories with more than 100 workers and the factory with mechanical power. The Factories Act 1891, due The Factories Act 1891. Due to deficiency and loophole in the 1881 Act, it led to continuous trouble made by the employers. The Commission in 1884 considered the queries made by the employers. Then the Indian Factories Act 1891 was enacted.
Factories Act 1911. The safety provisions contained in the 1981 Act were inadequate and there were several fires occurred in the premises which leads to resulting more than 50 deaths between the 1901 to 1905. Therefore, the Factories Act 1911 was enacted to safeguard the workers in factories. The Factories Act 1922. After World War I, the integrated of the International Labour Organization was made in 1919, which focused on working hours, minimum wage, night work of the women and children. In 1921, there was a strike regarding the ratification of the convention by the labourers. Therefore, in 1922, the Factories Act 19 was amended and include provisions regarding working hours, minimum wage and night work of the women and children. The Factories Act 1934. In 1929, the Commission was set up of review an existing act to make recommendation for the sustainable development in labor living conditions. And the Factories 1934 was enacted and they come into the force in 1935, which includes the instruction of observation of the factories, which applies for the factories employing 20 or more workers with power.
The Factories Act 1934. In 1929, a Royal Commission was set up to review the existing Act and to make recommendations for a sustainable development in labor's living conditions. Hence, the Factories Factories Act 1934 was enacted and it came into forces in 1935, which included the inspection and observation of the factories, which applies to factories employing 20 or more workers with power. Next, the Factories Act 1948. The Factories Act 1934 were subsequently amended in 1935, 1936, 1937, 1940, 1941, 1944, 1945, 1946, 1947, and major amendment in 1948. Following the recommendations of Royal Commission, the Government of India enacted the Factories Act 1948, came into the force on April 1, 1949. The Factories Act 19